Hi, everybody. So, tonight, what we're going to talk about is how we can begin to think about logically, is Christianity true? We're going to make a different kind of argument than I don't think anybody makes this kind of argument. So, I'm going to make what I call the argument from the nature of mental faculties. And so, we're going to gain an understanding of the nature of this argument. We're going to see that there is a kind of way in which there is a real way that we can understand our human nature that can help us understand the whole various spectrum of thought that is within the human spiritual marketplace, and then even make decisions about, sorry, my nose is itchy, make decisions about which is most true, simply based on the nature of the faculties of the mind, without having any need to reference any kind of texts or preferences. We can simply make some assumptions about the nature of the human faculties, and from that can flow an understanding of truth. And so I want to share this argument with you, and I want to first, before we dive into the argument, tell a story. And the story is of a man who, I'm not sure really where I got this story. It was given by some type of a speaker somewhere, so I credit someone with this story. There's a man who wanted to get some work done he had like an office, and he had this little kid who kept, his kid was coming in and asking, Daddy, give me something to do. Can I ask you this question and this and that? And so the father said, okay, how am I going to get some time to do some work? And so the father also has a brilliant idea. He looks on his desk and there's like some type of like a National Geographic type magazine with a map in it. And so oh, okay. So what he does is he cuts out the map and he cuts it up into pieces and he says, okay, little Johnny, take this map and I want you to piece it back together for me. And when when you've done that, come and talk to me. And so the father says, wow, that was a smart idea. Well, I'm gonna have a lot of time to do some work. And so the kid goes away, and maybe 5 minutes later, the kid comes back and he's got the whole map set up. He says, Johnny, how did you do that? And he says, well, I didn't know how the map fit together, but I know what a man looks like. And I realized that the pictures, like on the back of the map, was the picture of a man's face. And so he says, so I knew that if I just pieced the man's face together, when I flipped it over, I'd have the map. And this is exactly the type of thing I'm saying in this argument from the nature of mental faculties. Because when we understand how the human mind works, we understand which religion has to be true. And so this is really powerful and can help us, because or else how long is it going to take us to piece together the map of human ideologies? If we just know who and what we are and how we function, we can figure out which one is true just based on that. And that'll take us 5 minutes, just like that kid, we don't have to think about it forever. So let's outline this argument, which I believe is very powerful. So I'm going to say this, and this is some of these terms in this are defined in a somewhat loose manner, and I don't mean that as a way. Oh, there's a chipmunk looking at me. Hello. He's coming up the stairs. He's looking at. He's looking at me sidelong. But the thing is, I'm using these terms like mental faculties, mental abilities. I'm not trying to make a weird statement of specificity about the human mind can only do these exact number of things. I'm making a kind of a general argument that has enough substance to be talking about something real. So when I'm saying things like thinking or imagination, I mean these terms in a general term, but there's enough reality to them that I'm talking about something real. I'm not saying there's only this number of human abilities or mental faculties. There might be some other ones. But I believe that the logic of the argument is solid and the substance of the constructs in it is solid enough to make real arguments from it. So, without further ado, I believe that we could safely say that a mental faculty which transcends and includes the operation of another faculty is higher than that faculty. So, for example, let's say that my ability to think about something presupposes my ability to have seen that thing. So, for example, my thinking is higher than just my perceptual ability because I'm looking over there and I'm seeing a looks like a finch and a cardinal on the bird feeder. And my ability to think about birds, is presupposes my ability to see birds. So thinking is transcends and includes my ability of use of my senses. So thinking is a more inclusive understanding of reality than is just perception. And if I, by extension, my ability to really think about this thing is broadening my reality. So I'm seeing a higher level of truth that I'm thinking about the birds rather than simply seeing them without thinking. So like if I just see the bird, I may mean nothing. But if I see the bird and think about it, it transcends and includes the operations of those lower faculties. So thinking is superior to just perceiving because it transcends and includes the operations of perceiving. And by definition, it also engages with reality in a more comprehensive way, a truer way, we could say. So now now that you kind of have like a taste of what this is, we're now going to go through the faculties in a systematic manner. And so as we do that, then we're going to make some assumptions and we're going to think about religions, because there are different religions that emphasize the use of a certain faculty or prioritize the use of a certain faculty, and then we're going to make that argument. So to begin, we could say that our ability to imagine transcends and includes the operations of the senses and awareness and those type of things. Because if I imagine, if I look at this there's like a tree in front of me or a bush type thing. If I look at this object and then I imagine it, I could see it in my imagination. So it transcends and includes the use of perceptions. So, and if you want to do this as we're going along, you can kind of look at some object in your environment and kind of look at it and then kind of think about it and see it in your mind. You could realize very quickly that your imagination transcends and includes your ability to perceive. Because it depends on having seen things. Like you can't imagine out of nothing, Now, in the same way we could say thinking transcends and includes the operations of the imagination. Because, okay, if I see the bush in front of me, or there's like a hibiscus plant, if I look at that, then I imagine it, then I think this hibiscus plant came from my grandmother's house. So I can see it, I can imagine it, I can think about it. That's giving me more information. So we could see that thinking transcends and includes the operations of the imagination. Now, also then the thing is the act of the will. Willing, the use of the will, transcends and includes the operations of thinking. So if I think about the hibiscus plant, I say, okay, I look at it, I can imagine it, I can think, okay, that's my grandmother, descended from my grandmother's hibiscus plant. Oh, maybe I should take good care of it. Let me go and take care of the plant, and I'm going to make sure that I have a resolution to take care of that plant because it's important to me, and I'll go and clip off the dead leaves and stuff like that because it matters to me. Because now my thinking, my willing transcends and includes the operations of my thinking. And let's say now relating transcends and includes the operations of willing. So for example, if I it's not just like talking out loud. Like I'm talking into this video, for example. But if someone's sitting next to me and I'm talking to them, like that's different than just talking. Like having a conversation is different than speech. But speech is included in conversation. So the ability to have a relationship is included in our ability to think. It's not just like random. Same thing. Like if we just use our analogy here of the hibiscus plant, I can think about it. Let's say I see it. I can imagine it. I can think it's my grandmother's plant. I can take good care of it, and then it's also part of my relationship with my family. I can say, "Oh, Dad, I'm really making sure let's together take care of grandma's old plant." Because we're having a relationship about this thing, and that transcends and includes it as a bigger context. It gives us more information about what's really going on in reality when I'm taking care of the hibiscus plant. So that is that. So also, we could have a sense then, if we wanted to take this also then now, if there is, we can very conservatively say something here. We could say, okay, a spiritual type of relating, if it exists, transcends and includes the operations of natural relating. So, for example, let's say now my grandmother has passed away. Let's say, and we think of her as me and my dad are taking care of the hibiscus plant. So this is an even wider context. We could say, okay, maybe there's something, we're trying to honor her legacy and the values of, family and these different things, these transcendent values that my grandmother had by honoring this plant. And maybe there's this sense in which we can, somehow communicate with her, not in a weird way. But like maybe we can pray for her or things like that, or maybe she can pray for us if she's in heaven and stuff like that. There could be this kind of, well, obviously there's a lot more to unpack with these, but I'm just giving somewhat specific and somewhat generic examples of what someone might think spiritually. So the thing is, there could be this wider context even than just the immediate scene relationships. When I'm taking care of this plant with my dad, there could be this even bigger context. And if it exists, that would be the highest possible context. So we can see at least that, especially we can see that the relational faculties and especially these spiritual relational faculties would be the highest in this list that we've gone through right now. Because they kind of have, they more fully show the picture of reality and the truth of what's going on than the lower ones. Because, the fact that I'm honoring the hibiscus, I'm not in a weird way, but the fact that I'm taking good care of this plant because my grandmother is looking down on me from heaven and is pleased with this, that's a much more transcendent context than like just staring at the plant. That's just with the senses only. So that's kind of shows us the highest amount of truth can come from a relational or spiritual relational framework. So that I hope kind of is intelligible as the foundation for this argument, because this understanding of the faculties is the basic way of proceeding with this argument. So we also could say that each religious, philosophical, and psychological tradition is characterized by the use of certain faculties in a certain manner which shapes its perception of truth and its understanding of reality. So, and then we can kind of go through the ones which, so we could say Eastern religions such as like Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism specialize in the use of they specialize in the use of a what do you call it? They specialize in the use of a way of, they specialize in the use of certain faculties. And, so the thing is, this thing, we want to make sure that this use of the faculties is, we want to see how this lines up with this different, understanding that we've laid out with these levels. So here we go. Eastern religions like Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism specialize in the use of attention and the senses, because Buddhism involves paying attention to things. Hinduism involves an awareness of what they call the true self. Taoism involves, a kind of harmony with the rhythms of yin and yang, of nature, and these different types of things. It's kind of, these religions point to a kind of use of attention and the senses. And we can see this very much in the practice of mindfulness meditation. And so we understand now the position of the senses in our chart of human perception. So that senses are foundational. If you get anesthesia, there is nothing else happening. They're foundational, but they are the basis. They are not the highest. Now, so here, I don't think there's any philosophical or religious or psychological tradition that only uses imagination. So we're going to skip that. So we're going to move to thinking. And so things like the Western approaches like Stoicism, the kind of this kind of philosophy of Stoicism, is something that uses the ability to think and to decide and to will in a very coherent way. They have these ideas called prohairesis and hegemonikon, these kind of Greek terms that, so this kind of self-directed thinking ability that we have to choose and to understand the world in a certain way. And the Stoic philosophy, I would call it a religion actually, um, was very much about thinking and how do we use thinking to understand things. Um, and we see obviously, as I mentioned, if we when we talked about the other faculties, we talked about the Eastern religions like Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism, using the senses. We really can come to understand that these things are, these things really can, you know, mirror the third wave behavior therapies, the mindfulness therapies, and that the Stoicism, we can even break it down to be like, the cognitive therapies in psychotherapy, and also we could say the behavioral therapies. It could be linked. We use the thing of the senses, the imagination, the thinking, and the willing. So willing can be the behavioral therapies, doing stuff. So those type of things fit in there. And then we could say religions like Judaism and Islam, and even the 12-step therapies, can be said to be using the relational capacity. We can see this very clearly in the reliance on a higher power, repairing relationships through making amends, and relying on group support. So we can really understand that, as we kind of drop the different religious traditions of the world onto this framework, which we established in the first argumentation, that we said, okay, the faculty which transcends and includes the different, the other faculties before it, is highest. It gives us the biggest context. We can see that in a way, we could see that, okay, there's a context of Buddhism, and the mindfulness stuff. There's a context of Stoicism and the cognitive stuff, and maybe the behavioral therapies, and then we have kind of the 12 steps and the Judaism and the Islam type things. And we can see that this context of this relational context is transcending and including capacities in the earlier ones. We could say that it's so for example in the 12 step movement, we could see that it transcends and includes things below it, because it says there's slogans like think. Well, that's like like the cognitive stuff, or they may have things like one day at a time. Maybe that's kind of like the mindfulness stuff. There's all different ways in which the 12 steps might transcend and include the other approaches, and ways in which there's the even the things of Judaism can or Islam. When you see like Jewish or Islamic mysticism, you can see how there is the transcendence and inclusion of the mindfulness traditions, especially in traditions like the Kabbalistic meditation styles of Buddhism and the Sufi meditations of Islam. You could certainly see how everything is transcended and included in there. So you can see these ways in which we could say that we could rank these things in terms of their anthropological emphases, in which is more and more true. And so we could also, I'm sorry, my nose is getting really itchy, but don't worry. It's just getting all want to scratch it. It's kind of itchy thing. So now, the mental faculty, which we can also say then that there's also, we kind of went through this relational thing, but then there's also this other spiritual dimension, which the Christianity, which uses this kind of different kind of relating faculty. Christianity has this other thing where it kind of sees God as both outside of ourselves and going inside of ourselves in this really unique way. You could place Christianity in this thing of like what we talked about, this potential spiritual relating in our previous list. And so Christianity, there are, there is this deep way in which we find this spiritual relating, which again transcends and includes all that you find in the Jewish tradition, the Islamic tradition, and all the other traditions. Like we see, for example, in the teachings of the Desert Fathers, things that are similar all the way back to mindfulness. We see, because there's this thing of self-awareness and watchfulness and these different things. So we see that all is transcended and included in the tradition of Christianity, and we see that Christianity is has a lot of the ideas, one God, in a way, and it kind of has this Trinity idea, that, and so everything that is included in this kind of maybe the relational level is transcended and included. So Christianity is seen to be this transcendent and inclusive reality, and therefore is the most true out of all the religions because it matches our anthropological model. Again, this is like what we were talking about at the beginning, where you're trying to systematize how everything works by looking at the um, by looking at the by looking at the way this all goes, by looking at the way all this stuff fits together, and like just like seeing that man, looking at that man, seeing his face on the back of the map, you're getting a sense now of how does the map fit together, which religion is true. Christianity transcends and includes the ideas and practices, mental faculties, and their use of all the other things. Because like if you, it transcends and includes them, so it is the highest one. There's a lot of different ways we could talk about that, and I'm probably not, if we look, so for example, I'm trying to just look at different ways we could say it transcends and includes it. We could certainly see, when we're talking about Judaism, you could certainly see that Judaism is transcended and included in Christianity because of the Old Testament being included in Christianity, but being, transcended and included because, so you could see that's one argument for saying, okay, this is why they're in this order, and this is why Christianity kind of comes out as being the one that is true. But we also want to say there is more that we can argue here. We can kind of continue this argument because we came out that Christianity is true among the religions. So, but which brand of Christianity, so to speak, is the true one? Well, again, we have to take the idea of the man's face and apply it to the complexity of the situation and say, okay, within Christianity, there are factions that prioritize the use of certain mental faculties, just like there are religions outside of Christianity that use the use of certain mental faculties. Since a mental faculty which transcends and includes another faculty is higher and takes in more of reality, the form of Christianity which uses the most elevated faculty in a primary way is therefore most true. So groups like, for example, like Pentecostal Christianity could be said to make use of the senses or experience as a primary driver. We see this, this is kind of, we're almost making this comparison on the list to, awareness, to almost like, I'm not saying that that Pentecostalism is like exactly like Hinduism. That's not what I'm saying. But like, to the level of senses, because the thing is, the Pentecostal movement is all about, okay, am I having an experience of God? Am I speaking in tongues? Is there this visible type of experiential, this deeply emotional, experiential type thing, this experiential level, like the senses? That's what they're interested in. So they might also say, like this Pentecostal idea is like, okay, we have this sense of like experience is primary, like the senses. So they're at that first level. Then groups like mainstream evangelical Christianity could be said to prioritize the intellect and the will. So you see things like, in evangelical Christianity, a prioritization of the intellect. I'm supposed to believe these certain fundamental things. I'm supposed to believe in the Bible. I'm supposed to believe in these propositions. Like, I need to believe this stuff. Or you might see in mainline churches, you need to work for social justice or things like that. There's an act of the will that's necessary. So these things can transcend and include these other things. Like somebody could be kind of Pentecostal in their experience. They might believe in like listening to worship music and having experiences with God, but they could also then do work in society and do social work as like that level, or believe in the gospel. It's not one transcends and includes it. You then have things like, the Eastern and Oriental Orthodox. They prioritize an interior prayer of the heart, which that's similar to the prayer of the relating. When we talked about, like when we were talking back about the plant, this is like, okay, I'm relating to my dad, we're both taking care of the plant. It's about relationship. Or we talked in the second list, about things like Judaism and the 12 steps in Islam. This kind of relational, interior, like hidden relational thing is what's prioritized in the Eastern and Oriental Orthodox churches, especially in the Jesus prayer tradition. And this is usually something that is set over and against, the Western Catholic understanding of prayer. Like the Easterners would say that this interior prayer is the main thing, rather than where Catholics would kind of say the main thing is the sacraments, in a way. I'm simplifying this. But the thing is, like this relating ability is kind of prioritized in those traditions. But then again, Catholics prioritize the sacraments as a spiritual encounter with God, which is similar to a more spiritual relating. It's a more objective participation in God, rather that it's like locating the center of everything kind of a little further in a more transcendent way. It's like there's this sense of like this meeting place between God and man, which So, for example, if we were to take the Catholic teaching on the Eucharist, okay, God is present in the sacred host. And so, therefore, this is the meeting place of God and man. So, there's a way in which my encounter with the sacrament, by receiving the sacrament, is in a way more primary, more transcendent, more inclusive of my than prayer that happens interiorly. So, there's this kind of more to God, then my soul, then my ability to kind of relate to people. Then, like going back to it's like there's this more transcendent faculty out here, which is this spiritual relating, this place of encounter. Then there's my interior prayer. Then there is my ability to think, to will, to bump, all the way back. So, and all the way back to we had the idea of experience, all the way back there with the Pentecostals. So therefore, since we're making this list again, therefore Catholicism is true. So we see, as we've argued that if there's relational faculties and a spiritual relational faculty, if it exists, is the highest faculty. We looked at the religions and said, well, Christianity transcends and includes the operations of the faculties in other religions, so therefore it's true. And then we looked at Catholicism as a brand of Christianity and said that it transcends and includes, the operations of other faculties in other Christian groups, and so therefore it is true. So we have this sense of, a logical argument for Catholicism being true based on human faculties. And again, the whole thing is based on not having to try to do some weird reasoning, but to very quickly, just like that little kid who was given the picture of the map of the world and used the face of a man to piece together the map, we've now taken the structure of human functionality and its faculties of the mind, the nature of that, and apply that to the complexity of the ideological landscape, and therefore come to an understanding of the truth of the Catholic faith. So we close in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.